I had not fan out. I was like, I'm a hoop fan, and I did not fan out. Like we were, me and my boys would be sitting there and be like, "It's Magic today. Like we're going to see Jordan." So the idea of having those moments, trying to remain professional was hard for me. It became a little bit less hard once they started talking about Jerry, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
For them, he was more than just a GM or just a coach or just a player. He was a friend, a mentor, a brother, a father figure. When you hear people start talking about a person like that, the fandom goes away. You're now talking on the human level.
You are Black in the Green Room with me, your host, Keith Underwood. And this is your spot for real talk about entertainment with entertainers, creatives, and showbiz professionals. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much. It's as you know, it's Keith Underwood. My column is Black in the Green Room inside the Los Angeles Sentinel. And man,
Sentinel, woo,
yes, that's right, baby. Looking forward to talking to you.
bro. I mean, it is an honor.
Good, man. Good. So you've built your career telling culturally impactful stories through scripted television. So what excited you creatively about stepping into the documentary space with this story, and how did you approach it from an entertainment standpoint?
Well, I've produced a few documentaries and I always really enjoyed the process, you know what I'm saying, but I hadn't directed one. Directing has become something that is, I think the next sort of stage in my life. I really enjoy the storytelling from that point of view. Documentaries were something that I feel like there's a purity to. One of the last places that there is to, because you can't just say something without at least putting together some sort of argument behind it, which I think is almost a lost art in our world. Newspaper editing, newspaper writing is another, articles are another thing. You can't, by the definitions of journalism, you know what I'm saying? You say something, you need to be able to back it up with what your opinion is coming from. So I think that was something that I found, intriguing and inspiring and I wanted to dive into. And I think that this with Jerry was you know, an amazing place to start that process.
Yeah. What was it about his story particularly that drew you to it?
I mean, he's Jerry West. I'm from LA. He's Jerry West, and I can't not be drawn to that. I think that, one of the things that I wanted to do is talking to a lot of my friends, there's always a little bit of with people of color, like there's always a little bit of doubt with us. We're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, why we don't get this white boy the logo? You know what I'm saying?
Right, right, right.
And I wanted to say like, I wanted to really dive into that, and I think that I actually Jerry understood that was sort of question, and that's why he probably didn't always embrace the idea of it. But I actually feel like I walked out of this very confident that they made the right choice. You know what I'm saying? That he absolutely did, I not just epitomize, you know what I'm saying, but iconically sort of represented what the logo is and probably should be from
Hmm.
being what he was to basketball from its very early, almost nascent, beginnings to where to present day, what he meant to it.
Absolutely. So when you're telling the story of someone like Jerry West, who people think they already know, how do you shape the narrative so it feels fresh, cinematic, and engaging for an audience?
I think one of the things that I definitely try to do. I remember watching a Spike Lee documentary on Michael Jackson. I think
Hmm.
Spike included conversations, I'm saying himself in the conversations. Anthony Anderson was at the premiere and gave me shit. And he was like, "Why you put yourself in the documentary so much?" And I was like, "Thanks, Ant." But I was like, I was actually ready to answer that question because it was not from a sense of like ego or a sense of like, I think I wanted people to feel that this was a conversational homage to a person that I really began to form a friendship with. You know what I'm saying? I could understand whether he saw it or not. I saw my own father figure in it. You know what I'm saying? I
Hmm.
saw a brotherhood in it, and I wanted to make sure that people felt that, in the piece, that it wasn't just talking heads, that it was conversations with people that I, admired and wanted to have that. And I also felt like I wanted to um, make this, I think the music was a big part of it. We wanted to
Hmm.
anachronistically sort of contrast the period with current music, you know what I'm saying? And bring those things together in a way that sort of could bring people who may not quite know who Jerry is into it through certain sonic attributes. I think the editor did an amazing job. Jamie Nelson, she did an amazing job. She just was as a producing partner, she helped me sort of help form the sort of aesthetic narrative of this. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Wanted to make it feel slick is not the word, but we did want to make it feel aesthetically pleasing. You know what I'm saying? And make it feel like it was something that could keep you invested in it from a visual standpoint as well.
Yeah. If you had to pick one song from the soundtrack, which one would be his theme? Which one would be Jerry West's theme?
Um, well, there's two. We didn't even get it using. He really want John Denver's "Take Me Home Country"
Hmm.
was something that he really, in terms of, um, West Virginia was, a lot of people come out of those situations and never want to go back. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? When you look at all the toxicity and trauma he had, he loved going back to West Virginia. You know what I'm saying? And because it was a place that he found, um, you know, I think something that was special to him. And I think that was, something that I really saw. Like he wasn't running from who he was. He understood the negative parts of it, but um he also like embraced that was, you are where you come from, and he also embraced that.
Yeah, most definitely. There's a really emotional weight to Jerry West's story. So how did you balance that depth with making sure that the documentary that it still feels compelling and watchable as entertainment?
Um, I felt like to just be honest and try to like kind of use the tenets of what I kind of got from Jerry, authentic, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mm,
he allowed us to his book, if you read his book, you don't really have to worry about you know, what you say because it was so self-deprecating and honest. You know what I'm saying? And so
mm,
I feel like he was really open. And I think that it allowed us, with him being as open as he was, it allowed us to tell a really true portrayal of him, warts and all, not just to, make it a fluff piece. And I think that was after Jerry passed, I wanted to make sure that the pivot happened that you want now you're not telling Jerry's story, you're telling his family's story of the legacy of him, right?
mm, hmm.
And I think, and because he was so open, I still was allowed to really tell a story that did not just tell a story of a man who was unflawed. It told a story about a man who has flaws, who had demons, who had things that he wanted to exercise, you know what I'm saying, that he was constantly working through.
Hmm. Yeah, how did you connect and what was that first meeting like?
I was, he was interviewing people to talk to people who to see if he even wanted to do it. He wasn't sure he even wanted to do it.
Hmm.
I think one of the impetuses of him wanting to do it was the portrayal of him in Winning Time.
Mm.
He felt like it wasn't fair.
Yeah.
And so, I was like, he's never gonna let me do this. I haven't done one before. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm this black guy walking there in sagging jeans and chains and shit. And I was like, and he really quickly was like, you know, the idea of, coming from um my grandmother would have called it Crackerville, coming from West Virginia, you know what I'm saying, where they, it's so homogenized that they didn't even really have time to not like black
Hmm.
people because there were not even barely any black people around. But the idea of him coming from that into the NBA, where most of his friendship experiences were immediately with, as an adult, were with black people, I feel like he found there was a comfort that we immediately saw in each other. You know what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
coming from a place where you don't really expect much socioeconomically, you don't know that you're going to really be able to have much, and then to actually achieve success, there we kind of shared that moment, you know what I'm saying, and have those things. And so I think that there was a lot of things that I felt a kinship with him too, and I wanted to sort of tell him almost in some aspects the best stories are where you sort of see your story through another person.
Hmm. Yeah, I watched Winning Time, and I'm going to ask you candidly. Now, during the process of the documentary, do you agree with the portrayal, or do you think it was unfair?
I do not agree with the portrayal.
Hmm.
I like the show.
Hmm.
Saying I do not agree with the portrayal of Jerry West. Uh,
Nice.
I think in getting to know him, it was a hyper realized, version of a man who had so many more layers and so much more restraint, what I'm saying, than was shown there, and also had so much funnier. You know what I'm saying? Some
Mm.
of the funniest dudes you could ever sit down and talk to, and someone had so much more guidance and true leadership and wisdom and heart and empathy than was shown there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you've worked with some of the biggest names in entertainment, and having voices like Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and others change how you structured the storytelling or elevate the overall viewing experience.
Um, I had not fan out. I was like, I'm a hoop fan, and I did not fan out. Like we were, me and my boys would be sitting there and be like, "It's Magic today." And like we're going to see Jordan. I give like it was crazy. So the idea of having those moments, and trying to remain professional was hard for me because I wanted to be a sports fan. But it became a little bit less hard once they started talking about Jerry, to be honest with you,
Hmm. Yeah,
because
yeah.
for them, than um, he was more than just a GM or just a coach or just a player. He was a friend, a mentor, a brother, a father figure, and someone who each of them had a personal encounter or relationship that had an lasting, impactful moment in their life. And I felt like when you hear people start talking about a person like that, the fandom goes away and you're now talking on the human level.
Hmm. Absolutely. As a storyteller, what were some of the creative choices that you made, whether it was visually, as you mentioned with the music, structurally, that really helped bring the documentary to life for the screen?
I wanted to make sure that it felt visually compelling.
Mm,
We had a guy, Jeff Wunderlich, who was the visual sort of creative director in terms of, you know, our our visual aesthetic and sort of like the way we, edit effects and things like that. It was amazing. Our editor, Jamie Nelson, it was and producer partner was just amazing, tirelessly talking about like story and how we sort of got into things. I spent more time on this, to be honest with you, Keith, than I've spent on any movie, television project, anything I've done. It
wow.
and I have so much more respect, and I want to do more documentaries, but I now have so much more respect for documentary filmmakers than I ever did before because you don't, when I write a movie, I know what I'm shooting. I know this is day 14 and this is the car scene, right? When you're
Right.
trying to get performances, you want to hit this, you don't know what you're when you're making that documentary, the documentary makes itself. You know what I'm saying? You may start off with what you think is going to be, but it becomes the best documentaries become something else because you people say things and it pivots and you have to reverse engineer and let it sort of become the baby that it's going to be.
Yeah, yeah. What where did that dedication to that process come from?
I think I don't like to just personally for me, right? I don't like to fail. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like
I feel you.
there are those moments I definitely feel like everything is not the same, and I definitely have put up my bricks, but I don't feel like I put up too many. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Even if critics don't like it, whatever, I feel like I can stand behind most of the things that I do. At least from a personal standpoint. So I did not want to take this legacy of this amazingly huge icon and do something that I didn't at least feel proud of. Whether or not people like it or not, I can't speak to that, but I can say that I did my best. Um,
Mhm.
and I think once I got into it and I saw what he actually meant to so many people
Mhm.
when he passed, I think that was the big pivot for me. Once he passed, it became me not doing your story, Keith. You know what I'm saying? I'm now doing
Right.
a family story. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you allow me to do your story and you happen to pass through that and we formed a bond, me and you could have done it, and I could have been like, "Do you like it?" And like, what? But once it's now Keith's family, like telling of the legacy of that, it took on a different weight.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're in an era where documentaries are competing with scripted content for attention. So what do you want audiences to feel while watching this on Prime, beyond just learning Jerry West's story?
I want them to be entertained. You know what I'm saying? I want them to sort of like want to watch it again. I want them to see something in it that they didn't know about somebody they thought they knew or someone they thought they didn't know. But I want them to be entertained. I think there's a lot of interesting moments in there that I found out during the way that I think
Mm,
is interesting for other people to find out during the way. I think, you know, the idea of someone who comes from that kind of a traumatic, toxic upbringing to be able to come up and do what he did and still not be broken. You
hmm.
they say broken people break people, and
Yeah.
this is a person who I definitely feel like he probably, cracked some eggs along the way, but he helped a lot more people than I think he hurt. You know what I'm saying? And that is proof positive that just because we have pain in our life or things that are troublesome in our upbringing doesn't mean that we have to, moving forward, become that monster that, from the monsters of which we came.
Yeah. Outside of Jerry West being humorous, what else did you learn about him?
Um, that he was an amazing golfer. Like amazing. I think he holds the record still at Bel Air. I'm saying amazing, amazing golfer. And I think that comes from, that sort of, you know, wanting to win. You know what I'm saying? Golf is one of those things. And the idea of like, I tell my kids this, if you want to get good at something, you got to get off the computer, you got to stop hanging out with friends. You got to spend some time by
Mm,
yourself doing this. You got to
right.
spend some time by yourself getting good at whatever you want to do. And I think that's a little bit lost on the younger generations is that they don't spend enough time by themselves actually working towards something. So the things that he enjoyed doing from gambling to golfing to whatever, he spent time getting good at them. And I also, the idea I work with I have 6 kids and I work a lot with my kids. And I wish that I can work with them more. I mean my daughter are writing partners in some things. My other
Mm,
daughter's done some things with me. My other daughter has done some things with me. I enjoy being with my kids and I feel like that is one of the greatest things I think that we can do is if we can build a family business is what most of this country's, you know, billionaires and the people who built they
mhm.
created family businesses. And I think as a person of color, being able to sort of pass that down that there is something to having more family businesses and things that we do together, I think it would be great for us.
Yes. Kenya Barris, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on your Jerry West documentary for Black in the Green Room inside the Los Angeles Sentinel. I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you, Keith.
All right, take care now. Be sure to follow me, Keith Underwood, at Mr. Keith L. Underwood on IG. You can also follow me on FB at Keith L. Underwood. And you gotta follow Black in the Green Room at Black in the Green Room across all platforms. Until next time, this has been Black in the Green Room.